Rain. Cold, merciless rain, slicing through the night like shards of broken glass. It fell on marble columns and blood-stained sand, washing over the cries of the crowd that had gathered in the great Roman Colosseum. Their voices rose in savage hunger, wolves in human form, baying for punishment, for blood, for the spectacle of a fallen warrior. Torches burned in iron sconces, their flames bending under the storm's fury. Every flicker painted shadows that danced across the walls, twisting into faces that sneered, mocked, condemned. And in the middle of it all, she ran. Lyra. Barefoot, drenched, her breath tearing through her chest as she pushed through corridors once sacred to the gods of the moon. Her steps echoed on the marble, each one a heartbeat closer to freedom, or to death. Her wrists bled from broken chains, the scent of iron mixing with the salt of her sweat. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless, wounded, begging to rise, but the pain was too much. Her body trembled as if she were fighting the very storm itself. Lightning split the sky outside, flooding the hall in white. For a single heartbeat, her reflection flashed on the wet floor, mud, blood, and defiance. A girl once crowned as her pack's fiercest warrior, now reduced to prey. She stumbled into the shadows of an abandoned temple, the air heavy with dust and old prayers. The rain dripping through the cracked roof whispered like ghosts. Statues of ancient deities watched her, blind, silent, unfeeling. Their faces were chipped, their arms broken, but they seemed to mourn her all the same. She pressed her back against the cold stone, chest heaving, eyes darting toward the distant Colosseum gates. The roar of the crowd still thundered through the rain, the sound of chains and fury echoing from every direction. Her fingers brushed the mark on her wrist, the burning crest of her pack. It still glowed faintly beneath the skin, carved there by his hand. Kael. Her throat tightened. His name alone was a wound that refused to heal. He had been her leader. Her protector. The one who looked at her once like she was the heartbeat of his world. And then, in front of them all, he had turned away. His eyes had been unreadable that day, neither cruel nor kind, just empty. The council had called her cursed, dangerous, unfit for the bloodline of their pack. And he had let them strip her of everything, her title, her home, her wolf. The memory hit like a blade twisting in her gut. She had stood there as they branded her skin with molten silver, the smell of burning flesh filling the air. The pack had watched, silent. Not one voice rose in her defense. And Kael. Kael had whispered only 2 words. Forgive me. She hadn't. She couldn't. Now, with thunder cracking overhead, the same mark pulsed under her fingertips, half curse, half reminder. Outside, the storm raged harder. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying with it the cries of the pack still baying for her blood. They had called her monster. They had called her traitor. But beneath her pain, a spark of something fierce still burned, a whisper that maybe they were wrong. Maybe the monster was what they should have feared all along. Her chest rose and fell, each breath shallow, ragged. She could taste the metallic tang of blood in her mouth. She pressed her forehead to the cold stone, whispering through clenched teeth. If the gods won't save me. Her voice cracked, barely audible over the storm. I'll become my own salvation. For a moment, the storm paused, as if listening. Then, somewhere deep in the forest beyond the ruins, something answered. A growl. Low, ancient, primal. It wasn't the sound of a wolf. It was older, heavier, like the voice of the earth itself awakening from sleep. Lyra froze. The hairs on her arms stood on end. Her pulse quickened. The shadows seemed to shift around her. The torches guttered. The scent of ozone thickened, tinged with something wild and electric. She felt it then, a pulse, faint but familiar, thrumming beneath her skin. Her wolf. Weak, but alive. Not yet, she whispered. Please, not yet. Her eyes lifted to the heavens through the cracked roof. The moon, half hidden by storm clouds, glowed faintly. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw something moving across its surface, wings made of silver flame, stretching toward her. But when she blinked, it was gone. Only rain. Only darkness. Her breath came faster. The air around her shimmered faintly, and the stones beneath her hands grew warm. A tremor ran through the temple floor, faint but unmistakable. She swallowed hard. "No," she whispered. "Not now." But it was happening. The thing she had feared most. The thing they had exiled her for. The power she had buried deep, trying to forget. It was waking up. The walls trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling in slow motion. Her body seized, light searing through her veins like molten silver. She gasped, clutching her wrist. The mark burned brighter, turning her skin translucent. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, so loud she could barely hear the storm anymore. A vision flickered in her mind, Kael's face, his voice calling her name. Then flames. Then silence. Lyra bit down on her lip until she tasted blood, forcing the power back, locking it behind the iron walls of her will. She couldn't lose control. Not here. Not now. When the light finally dimmed, she collapsed to her knees, trembling. Her breath came in jagged bursts, every inhale scraping against her ribs. The temple was still again. Only the storm spoke, whispering against the marble. She stayed there for a long moment, eyes closed, every muscle quivering from exhaustion. She thought of Kael, the weight of his stare, the way his scent had once calmed her wolf. She hated that even now, his memory lingered like a ghost she couldn't banish. Part of her wanted to believe he'd had no choice. That maybe exile was mercy. But another part, the wounded, vengeful part, knew better. He had chosen to protect his throne over her soul. And she would never forget it. Thunder rolled again, closer this time. She could feel them coming, the hunters sent to finish what the council had started. Her scent would be on the wind by now. They would find her soon. Her eyes darted to the exit, where the forest stretched like an ocean of black beneath the moonlight. She could run. She could vanish into the wilds again, live as she had these past years, half wolf, half ghost. But then she remembered that sound. That ancient growl. That tremor that had shaken the earth beneath her feet. Something in the world had shifted tonight. And for the first time in years, she wasn't sure if she was running from her fate anymore, or toward it. The air grew colder. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying whispers she couldn't quite understand. They sounded like her name, stretched and softened by distance. Lyra. She froze. That voice. It wasn't human. It wasn't even mortal. It was something in between. She rose slowly, her bare feet slipping on the wet stone. Her pulse hammered in her throat. The scent of rain and earth filled her lungs. She turned toward the sound, her eyes scanning the shadows. For a heartbeat, she saw nothing. Then, a flash of light, like moonfire, cutting through the darkness. It moved closer, step by step, until she could make out a figure cloaked in shadow. Broad shoulders. Eyes that glowed faintly gold. Her heart stuttered. No. It couldn't be. But even before the face came into view, she knew. It was him. Alpha Kael. The storm cracked above them, thunder booming like war drums. The light caught his features, wet hair plastered to his forehead, jaw tight, eyes fierce and unreadable. Lyra took a step back, her lips parting, but no sound came out. He looked at her as if he were staring at a ghost. For a long, breathless moment, neither moved. The storm screamed around them. The torches flickered. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Then he spoke, his voice low, steady, carrying through the wind. You shouldn't have come back. Lyra's gaze hardened. I didn't, she whispered. I was never truly gone. The air between them thickened, heavy with everything unsaid, grief, anger, longing, love that had died and refused to stay buried. Lightning flashed again, throwing their shadows across the temple walls, two figures bound by a fate neither could escape. Somewhere deep in the forest, that ancient growl returned, louder this time, closer. the earth trembled again. And in that instant, Lyra realized the truth. The storm wasn't just weather. It was a warning. Something had woken tonight. Something far greater than her pain, and far older than their love. The gods were watching again. And this time, they would not look away. If your heart races for forbidden love and redemption, the voice softens, lingering on every word. Subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections, where every story bleeds passion, and every scar tells truth. The rain had not stopped. It came down in steady sheets, washing over the broken marble of the temple ruins, turning the dirt beneath Lyra's feet to a thick, clinging red mud. Her breath steamed in the chill air, each inhale a struggle against exhaustion. Her pulse beat in her throat like the frantic wing beats of a trapped bird. She stumbled down the temple steps, clutching her side where the burn of her mark still seethed beneath the skin. The forest waited ahead, dark, endless, alive. Mist gathered low to the ground, wrapping itself around her ankles as if trying to pull her back into the past she was desperate to escape. The moon broke through the clouds, pale and cold. Its light spread across the trees like a ghostly veil, silvering every leaf and root. Lyra's vision blurred. Her legs gave out. She fell hard into the wet earth. The impact knocked the breath from her chest. Silence. Then, the sound of paws on wet soil. She lifted her head slowly, her hair plastered against her face. Yellow eyes glinted between the trees. 1 pair. Then 2. Then 5. The wolves of the wild, feral, untamed, the Roman wilderness scavengers, had caught her scent. Their growls rolled through the mist, low and hungry. They moved with the patience of predators that knew time was on their side. Lyra tried to rise. Her limbs trembled. The pain in her ribs flared like fire. She pressed a hand against the ground, but the strength wouldn't come. Her wolf was still weak, suppressed by silver, by fear, by years of exile. She looked up at the circling shadows. Their eyes gleamed. Their teeth caught the light. The air around her grew thick with the scent of musk and blood. She closed her eyes. Maybe this was how it was meant to end. Alone. Forgotten. Another exiled shifter swallowed by the woods that had once protected her kind. But just as the first wolf leapt, the world cracked open. A blur of motion cut through the mist. A snarl, sharp and deep, shattered the night. The attacking wolf dropped mid-air, its throat slashed cleanly. The others scattered back, whining, uncertain. A shape moved between her and the pack, tall, broad, cloaked in the storm. His presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore. The air itself bent around him. Lightning lit the clearing. Amber eyes burned through the haze. Kael. The sound of his name in her mind was a wound reopening. The Alpha who had marked her. The Alpha who had cast her out. For a long moment, the world seemed to narrow until there was nothing but the rain between them. He looked almost otherworldly, armor dark with mud and blood, hair dripping, chest rising steady as if he had walked through the storm untouched. He shouldn't have been here. Every law of the Empire forbade it. Alphas did not chase exiles. They did not risk themselves for the condemned. And yet here he was. The wolves that remained circled, growling. Kael didn't move. He didn't even glance at them. When they lunged again, his body moved faster than sight. Silver flashed, his blade, curved and ancient, a weapon older than the Empire itself. The air filled with the hiss of rain meeting blood. One by one, the beasts fell. When the last body hit the mud, silence reclaimed the clearing. Only the storm remained. Lyra watched him through the blur of her tears and the rain. He stood over the fallen wolves, chest rising and falling, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. There was no triumph in his stance. No relief. Only the heaviness of someone who had just killed part of himself. He turned toward her slowly. For the first time in years, she saw his face up close, not as the Alpha who had stood above her during her exile, but as the man she had once known. There was a weariness in him that hadn't been there before, carved deep around his eyes. His gaze found her, and in that instant, the years between them burned away. "You shouldn't have come back," he said, voice rough from the fight, low enough that it almost disappeared under the rain. Lyra met his eyes. Her voice came out colder than she felt. "I didn't. I was never truly gone." Something flickered across his face, a shadow of regret, maybe recognition. He stepped closer. She flinched but didn't back away. He reached out, his hand trembling just slightly, and his fingers brushed her wrist, the place where his mark still burned. It was a small touch, but it sent a shock through her entire body. Her pulse jumped. She pulled back instinctively, rage and something softer warring inside her. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless, confused. It remembered him even if she didn't want to. Kael's gaze dropped to the faint glow of his crest beneath her skin. "It never faded," he murmured. "It should have," she said. "I tried to erase it." "You failed." The words hung there between them, heavy as thunder. He looked at her again, the rain running down his face, mixing with the blood on his jaw. For a moment, he looked like the man she had once loved, the one who had laughed with her under the same moon, before everything turned to ashes. But there was something else in his eyes now. Guilt. Fear. Need. Lyra forced herself to stand. Her knees trembled, but she didn't let him see it. She lifted her chin. "Why are you here, Kael?" He hesitated. "You were being hunted." "I've been hunted for years." "Not by them," he said. "Not this time." Something in his tone made her blood run cold. "Then by who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, the air between them tightening, charged. "You have no idea what's coming, Lyra." "I stopped caring what comes," she said, voice shaking from more than just the cold. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The rain drummed softly between them, steady as a heartbeat. Finally, he said quietly, "I shouldn't have let them touch you." Her breath caught. The words pierced deeper than she wanted to admit. For a heartbeat, she saw the truth behind them, the night of her exile, the way his hands had trembled even as he branded her skin. "You did more than let them," she said. "You led them." His jaw clenched. "It was the only way to keep you alive." "By destroying me?" His silence was answer enough. The forest seemed to listen to them. The mist thickened, curling around their legs like smoke. The scent of rain, iron, and wet pine filled the air. Every breath they took seemed louder than it should have been. Kael looked down at her, and the tension between them shifted. It was still anger, sharp and burning, but under it, something darker moved. Familiar. Intimate. Dangerous. He said her name once, quietly. Lyra. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea. It was the sound of a man remembering the taste of a memory he could never swallow. Her pulse stuttered. She hated that it still responded to him. "Don't," she whispered. His eyes softened. "Don't what?" "Say my name like that. Like it still belongs to you." He stepped closer until she could feel the heat of him even through the rain. "Maybe it always will." The air snapped between them. For a moment, everything else fell away, the rain, the ruins, the scent of death. Only the thrum of the bond remained, that ancient pull that neither distance nor betrayal could sever. Her heart ached with it. She turned her face away, but he reached up, fingers brushing a strand of wet hair from her cheek. His touch was careful, reverent. The gesture broke something in her chest. "Why are you here, Kael?" she asked again, this time softer, the anger slipping beneath the exhaustion. "What do you want from me?" "I don't know anymore," he said. "I thought I did. I thought I could live with what I did to you. But every night, I see you. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the way you screamed when the silver touched your skin." Her throat tightened. "Stop. I can't." "You have to." He shook his head slowly. I tried to let you go, Lyra. I did. But there's no peace in it. You don't leave me. She wanted to hate him for saying it. She wanted to scream, to tell him he didn't have the right. But the truth hit too close. She hadn't been free of him either. Not in her dreams. Not in her rage. Not even now. The rain eased slightly, thinning to a soft drizzle. The forest felt quieter, heavier. Kael's scent filled the air, smoke, cedar, storm. It was the same scent that had once made her feel safe. Now it only confused her. She took a shaky step back. You should leave. He didn't move. You're hurt. I'll heal. Not from everything. The words lodged deep in her chest. For a second, she couldn't breathe. He reached for her again, slower this time. His fingers hovered above her wrist, not touching, just close enough for her to feel the pull. That mark still binds us, he said quietly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's not binding. It's haunting. His lips curved, but there was no humor in it. Maybe those are the same thing. Lyra closed her eyes. The bond pulsed faintly, a heartbeat beneath her skin that wasn't hers alone. She could feel him through it, the flicker of his pain, his regret, his fear that she might vanish again before he could make it right. When she opened her eyes, he was still there. Watching her like she was both ghost and salvation. She hated how much that look still affected her. Kael, she said softly, if you came here for forgiveness, you're wasting your breath. He met her gaze. I didn't come for forgiveness. Then why? His eyes darkened. Because something is coming for you. For us. And if I don't find you first, they will. She frowned. Who? But before he could answer, the wind shifted. Both of them froze. The scent of blood and magic drifted through the trees, faint but unmistakable. Kael turned toward the sound, his body tensing. We have to move. Lyra's pulse quickened. I don't take orders from you anymore. Then consider it advice. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't have to trust me. But if you stay here, you die. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her instinct screamed to run, from him, from this bond, from everything he represented. But beneath the fear was something she couldn't name, a pull older than anger. Finally, she nodded once. Fine. But this doesn't change anything between us. Kael's expression softened just slightly. I wouldn't dare to think it does. He turned toward the forest, scanning the mist for movement. Lyra followed, every nerve alive with the awareness of his presence beside her. The night swallowed them both, the alpha who had betrayed her, and the wolf who refused to die. And somewhere beyond the rain, something ancient moved again, watching them go. The storm followed them into the ruins. The villa stood like a wounded relic of another age, half swallowed by ivy, its columns cracked, its roof open to the fury of the sky. Each thunderclap seemed to echo through its hollow halls like the growl of some long-dead god. The air smelled of wet stone, decay, and ash, remnants of a time when this place had belonged to emperors and wolves alike. Kael pushed through the heavy doors, half-rotted but still defiant, and motioned for her to follow. Lyra hesitated at the threshold, the ghost of her old instincts whispering don't trust him. Yet the wind cut through her drenched cloak, and the night beyond seethed with unseen dangers. She stepped inside. The torch Kael lit cast uneven light across the chamber, revealing faded frescoes of battles and celestial beasts. One figure dominated the far wall, a woman haloed in silver fire, her arms outstretched toward the moon. Lyra's gaze caught on her face. It was worn by centuries, but the resemblance was unmistakable. The same sharp cheekbones. The same light in her eyes. Her lineage stared back at her from the stone. Kael noticed her stillness and turned. You shouldn't linger near that, he said quietly. The Romans used to worship her as a god of retribution. They built this place for her. I know who she is, Lyra murmured. And so do you. Their eyes met, and the distance between them felt sharper than any blade. She turned away, pulling her damp cloak tighter around her shoulders. Her body trembled, not from cold, but from the weight of memory pressing against the edges of her mind. Every step she took in the villa stirred ghosts from the corners. Whispers of the past crawled up through the cracks in the floor. He set the torch into a wall bracket. Rest. You're bleeding. I bled worse. I'm not arguing that. She ignored the faint humor in his voice. The firelight caught his face, the scars along his jaw, the deep lines of fatigue that hadn't been there before. He looked older, not in body, but in burden. The alpha mask he wore back in the capital seemed to have cracked somewhere along the road. Lyra sat near the remnants of a marble hearth. Her hands hovered near the embers Kael coaxed back to life. The warmth reached her skin, and with it came the ache of memory, the kind that doesn't fade, only burrows deeper. She hadn't spoken of that night in years. Not since the day everything ended. But here, with the storm howling beyond the walls and Kael's presence heavy in the room, the past pressed closer than breath. Her voice broke the silence first. Do you ever think about it? Kael looked up from the fire. About what? The night you branded me. The question landed like a blade. His hands froze mid-motion. The flames crackled louder, filling the pause between them. He exhaled slowly. Every night. She gave a hollow laugh. Good. Then you know what it feels like to burn. Kael's eyes flickered. You think I wanted that? You did that. I saved your life. You ended it. The tension twisted the air tight. Lightning flashed through the gaps in the ceiling, illuminating the anguish etched into both their faces. For a moment, she almost pitied him. Almost. But then the memories came, the jeers of the pack, the weight of chains, the smell of iron and spell fire. She had been dragged before the council in shackles, her wrists raw from the struggle. They called her cursed. Dangerous. A threat to their bloodline. She remembered the way the High Counselor had looked at her, not with fear, but disgust. The silver blood girl, he had sneered. The goddess's taint runs deep in her veins. And Kael, her alpha, her bondmate, the man who had sworn before the moon to protect her, had stood beside them, silent. When they chained her to the pyre stone, she had looked for him. She'd searched his eyes for any trace of rebellion, of defiance. She had found sorrow instead. That was worse. The brand had seared through her skin, the silver mark burning like molten truth. Her wolf had howled within, clawing at the confines of her bones. And when the final seal locked her power away, the world had gone dark. Lyra pressed a trembling hand to her wrist now, tracing the faint scar beneath the surface. The mark still pulsed faintly, alive with ancient heat. Kael's voice came low, hoarse. You think I didn't fight for you? You didn't fight hard enough. I stood before the council that night, he said, his tone breaking like a man unraveling. I begged them to spare you. But they already knew what you were, Lyra. The moment they saw the flame. The flame saved your soldiers, she snapped. I burned the Roman battalions that would have slaughtered us all. And they called it a curse. He stepped closer. It wasn't the flame that frightened them. It was you. Her breath hitched. Kael's eyes darkened, the fire reflecting in them like molten gold. They said the silver bloodline was dead. That no child of the goddess could survive the change. And then you appeared, stronger than any wolf in a century. You called the silver itself. She stared at the fire, seeing another one in its place, the inferno she had summoned on the battlefield years ago. The sky had turned white. The enemy's armor had melted in waves of shimmering light. Her own kin had fallen to their knees, unable to look upon her without trembling. I didn't ask for it, she whispered. I know. Then why punish me for being what I was born as? Kael didn't answer. He moved to the far side of the room, his hand pressed against the cold stone wall as if steadying himself. You think exile was punishment? What else would you call it? Mercy. The word cut through the air like a lash. Lyra's laugh came sharp, bitter. You have a cruel way of showing mercy. You would have been executed, Lyra. The council wanted your head before sunrise. The only way to stop them was to make them think I'd turned on you. You branded me in front of them. So they'd believe it. You left me to die. I sent guards after you, men loyal to me. They never returned. The fire popped, sparks scattering between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty, it throbbed with everything they'd left unsaid. Lyra looked down at her hands. The faint veins beneath her skin shimmered softly, threads of silver pulsing like trapped light. She hadn't seen it in years. Her power was stirring. Kael saw it too. His eyes narrowed, a mix of awe and dread crossing his face. It's waking again. I feel it, she whispered. It's like the storm recognizes me. Outside, thunder rolled in answer, shaking the walls. The mark beneath her skin glowed brighter, spilling pale light across the room. The fire dimmed in its wake, as if bowing to something older. Kael stepped toward her slowly. You need to contain it. I can't. You must. She rose to her feet, her chest heaving. You think I haven't tried? You think I haven't spent every night fighting it back, burying it so deep it couldn't hurt anyone again? The light pulsed harder, the air shimmering around her. The fresco behind her, the goddess of fire and moonlight, seemed to awaken, her eyes glinting faintly. Kael's hand closed around her wrist, grounding her. The contact burned, not from heat but from the connection that had never truly died. Breathe, he said. Focus on my voice. Her heart pounded. The flame under her skin flickered wildly, alive, furious, beautiful. She gasped as it surged toward the surface, her entire body trembling under its weight. Kael's grip tightened. Look at me. She did, and the power paused, as if even the silver flame remembered him. He stepped closer until his breath mingled with hers. His voice dropped to a whisper. You are not the curse they made you believe. You never were. Lyra's throat constricted. You said it yourself once. The silver bloods were meant to burn the world. And yet you saved it. Her eyes stung. You still think there's something in me worth saving? I never stopped. The words hit harder than any wound. Her power slowly receded, the glow fading back beneath her skin. The fire returned to its natural warmth. The storm outside softened, as if the world itself had exhaled. Lyra sank to her knees, the weight of exhaustion catching up. Kael knelt beside her, hesitating only a moment before brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. His fingers lingered there, gentle in a way that hurt. Why now, she whispered. Why come for me after all this time? He hesitated. Because the council knows you're alive. And they're not the only ones hunting you. Her eyes lifted to his. Who else? The Order of Ash. The Romans revived it. They believe your blood can awaken what their empire lost, the goddess's fire. Lyra's stomach turned cold. They want to use me. They want to become you. The realization struck like lightning. She rose, pacing toward the fresco. The goddess's carved eyes seemed to follow her. They'll come for the mark, Kael said. The one that binds us both. Lyra touched her wrist again, feeling the faint echo of his crest beneath her skin. The same one he carried. The same one that linked their souls. If they take me, she said, voice trembling, they'll take you too. He didn't deny it. So what now? She asked. We run. We find the remnants of your mother's coven before they do. Lyra turned slowly. My mother's dead. Her body is, Kael said softly. But not her power. The words rooted her to the spot. Her mind flickered with flashes she had spent years trying to forget, the scent of lavender and ash, the sound of her mother's voice whispering in the old tongue before the fire consumed her. Don't, she said, shaking her head. Don't make me remember her. You'll need to, he said. The bloodline calls to you now. It won't stop until you answer it. Her eyes glistened. You want me to embrace what destroyed everything I loved? I want you to survive. She stared at him for a long time, searching for deceit. There was none. Only a quiet desperation that mirrored her own. Finally, she whispered, if I help you, if I follow this, what happens when they find us? Kael's expression darkened. Then they'll see what the goddess left behind. The torchlight flickered violently, casting long, shifting shadows over the ruined walls. Lyra felt the tremor of her wolf stir again, stronger this time, no longer caged but awakening. She could feel Kael's heartbeat through the bond, steady but strained. Beneath the layers of guilt and command, she sensed his fear, not of her, but for her. For the first time, she let herself feel it too. The echo of what they once were. The possibility of what they might still become, if the world didn't tear them apart first. The storm outside broke fully then, rain pouring through the open roof, drenching the stone floor. Kael didn't move. Neither did she. The fire hissed, steam rising in tendrils. Lyra closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of both her curse and her rebirth. Then let the world come, she said. If they want the silver blood flame, they'll have to survive it first. Kael's jaw tightened. You sound like her. She met his gaze. Maybe it's time I stopped running from what I am. The storm answered with thunder. The fresco behind her seemed to glow faintly again, as if the goddess herself approved. In that ruined villa, under the eye of a forgotten deity, the past began to turn toward the future. Two wolves, once broken, now bound again by fate, stood at the threshold of a reckoning the world hadn't seen in centuries. And beneath Lyra's skin, the silver flame finally opened its eyes. The forest of Lyra did not welcome strangers. It waited. It listened. The air grew denser the deeper they went, thick with the scent of moss, petrichor, and something older, something that hummed beneath the soil, restless and alive. Ancient marble arches rose from the earth like bones of a forgotten empire, strangled by vines and shadows. Every surface was carved with runes that pulsed faintly when Lyra passed, as if recognizing her blood. Kael walked a few paces ahead, his expression guarded, his movements deliberate. The Alpha's aura usually silenced the world around him, but here, even he seemed humbled. The wolves that once ruled these lands had long vanished, their stories buried beneath centuries of Roman conquest and ash. Yet their presence lingered in every breath of wind, in every flicker of moonlight that slipped through the canopy. Lyra's steps slowed as the ground shifted beneath her boots. The path became a mosaic of ancient sigils, circles within circles, woven with lunar symbols. Her pulse synced with the rhythm of the forest, her senses sharpening with every heartbeat. She felt it before she saw it, the hum beneath her skin. The faint pull, magnetic and inevitable, guiding her toward something vast. When they reached the heart of Lyra, the trees parted to reveal a clearing bathed in moonlight so pure it seemed solid. In its center stood the altar, a slab of white stone, carved with silver inlays that caught the light and refracted it across the clearing like a living constellation. Around it, statues of wolves knelt in eternal reverence, their stone eyes turned skyward. Kael stopped at the edge of the clearing. His breath came slower now, like a man stepping into a dream he had hoped never to see again. This is where it began, he said quietly. Lyra's gaze drifted to the altar. The runes along its base glowed faintly, forming a pattern she recognized from her dreams, spirals of light intertwined with the shape of the moon. What is this place? She asked, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. Kael hesitated, then stepped forward. The ancients called it the Heart of Judgment. When the old gods walked among wolves, this was where they chose who would rise. And who would fall. His tone carried both reverence and dread. Lyra circled the altar slowly, fingers grazing the runes. They pulsed beneath her touch, responding like a heartbeat. You brought me here for a reason. Kael's jaw tightened. You need to see what I saw the night the council turned against you. He knelt by one of the marble pedestals half buried in ivy and brushed away the leaves. Beneath the moss lay an engraving, a wolf crowned with fire, standing upon a crescent moon. Lyra's breath caught. The design matched the mark on her wrist. "What is this?" she whispered. He looked up, his amber eyes haunted. "A prophecy. Written before the first alpha ever drew breath." She frowned, tracing the carved lines. "You knew about this before my exile." Kael nodded once. "I found it in the ruins when I was still a boy. The council forbade anyone from speaking of it. But when you were born, and the moon burned silver that night, I knew it was real." He stood, his expression torn between devotion and fear. "It says, when the silver flame returns, the old chains shall break, and the moon shall choose her queen." Silence followed, thick, weighted, holy. Lyra felt her heart pound against her ribs. The silver flame. Kael's gaze softened. "You." She shook her head, stepping back. "No. No, that's... Look at your skin." The moonlight intensified, washing the clearing in liquid silver. The markings along Lyra's arms, once faint, began to glow, each line and curve aligning with the symbols etched into the altar. Her breath hitched as the same energy she had tried to suppress now rose freely, dancing across her skin like living light. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by visions that came in flashes, blood moons, burning cities, wolves howling under crimson skies. She saw Kael, but not as he was now. He was older. Younger. Both. His voice echoed through the centuries, always calling her name. The images shifted. Chains shattering, rivers of silver flame coursing through battlefields, the moon splitting open to reveal a radiant eye that saw everything. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. The visions tore through her like wildfire. Kael was beside her instantly, hand steadying her shoulders. "Breathe. It's the prophecy showing you the truth." Her voice trembled. "This isn't truth, it's madness." He shook his head. "It's your inheritance." The forest shuddered around them, as if reacting to the awakening power. Leaves fluttered from the trees in spiraling waves. The marble wolves at the perimeter began to hum, their mouths parting slightly, releasing faint streams of mist that coiled toward her. Kael pulled her back, but she resisted, stepping closer to the altar. She felt the energy reach for her, not to harm, but to recognize. Her voice quivered as she whispered, "They called me cursed." But it wasn't a curse, was it? Kael's silence was answer enough. The air trembled as the runes flared brighter. Lyra's vision blurred, her surroundings shifting into something beyond the mortal plane. She stood suddenly in a vast, endless field of stars. Each constellation pulsed like a heartbeat, each strand of light connected to her veins. A figure emerged from the starlight, a woman wreathed in silver fire, eyes deep as the moon. "Child of my blood," the woman's voice resonated, soft but powerful. "You were hidden from me. Stolen by fear, buried by mortals who forgot their oaths." Lyra fell to her knees. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, tender and terrible. "I am the beginning and the flame you carry. I am what your world named goddess before it learned to fear fire." The words vibrated through her bones. "Why me?" "Because every era births its mirror," the goddess said. "And you are mine. The alpha who cast you out was meant to guard you, not from the world, but from what the world would make of you." Lyra's heart constricted. "Kael." The goddess nodded. "He broke the cycle by mercy. And now the moon waits, for your choice." "What choice?" "To rise," she said simply, "or to burn." The vision shattered. Lyra stumbled backward into Kael's arms, gasping for air. The clearing pulsed with residual light, then dimmed, leaving them in trembling silence. Kael's hands gripped her shoulders, steady but shaken. "What did you see?" She looked up at him, tears mingling with rain. "Her." His expression faltered. "The goddess?" She said, "The moon is waiting for me." Kael swallowed hard. "Then it's begun." The forest responded with a low, distant rumble. The marble wolf's eyes glowed faint blue, one after another, as if awaking from centuries of sleep. Lyra turned in a slow circle, her pulse pounding in her ears. Every statue seemed to breathe now, the air thick with energy older than the empire itself. "What does it mean?" she whispered. Kael's gaze drifted toward the altar. "It means your exile wasn't punishment. It was prevention. They feared this moment. You feared this moment." He didn't deny it. "If the prophecy is true, if the silver flame rises again, the balance between pacts, empires, and gods collapses. The last time it happened, the world drowned in blood." Lyra's eyes hardened. "So you banished me to save the world from me?" "I banished you to save you from the world," he said quietly. "You think the council would have stopped with you? They would have slaughtered anyone who carried your blood." She stepped closer, her voice trembling with fury and something deeper, betrayal. "You took away my home. My name. My life. All for a prophecy you didn't even understand." "I understood enough." The words stung because they were true. Lyra's hand trembled as she lifted it toward the glowing runes. "And now that it's happening?" Kael's eyes met hers, the weight of centuries between them. "Now, it's too late to stop it." The altar pulsed again, brighter this time, light bleeding into the trees. The moon above expanded, the shadows bending toward Lyra. Something ancient stirred within her chest. It was no longer pain, it was revelation. She saw the path stretching ahead, wars, thrones, destinies carved in blood. And at the heart of it all, her. The flame reborn, the queen foretold, the power no alpha could cage. Her voice broke through the silence, trembling but resolute. "Then let the gods see what they've made." She stepped forward and placed both hands on the altar. The light swallowed her whole. The forest roared. The wind rose into a cyclone of silver mist, tearing through the canopy, scattering leaves like falling stars. Kael shielded his eyes, shouting her name, but his voice was lost to the storm. The marble wolves howled in unison, their stone throats echoing through the ruins. And in the heart of it all, Lyra stood unmoved, her hair whipping like fire, her eyes glowing with celestial light. The sigils on her skin flared until they became part of the air itself. The moonlight bent around her, forming a radiant halo. She felt the goddess's presence one last time, a whisper through the storm. "You are the bridge between what was and what must be." The light dimmed, leaving her trembling but standing. Kael stumbled toward her, his expression torn between awe and terror. "Lyra." Her voice was quiet, distant. "It's awake now. All of it. What did you do?" She turned to him slowly, eyes still faintly aglow. "I didn't awaken it, Kael. It awakened me." For a long moment, neither spoke. The forest breathed around them, alive again after centuries of silence. Lyra looked up at the moon, the same one that had watched her exile, her pain, her return. It seemed closer now, almost within reach. Her words came soft, but filled with the weight of prophecy. "The old chains are breaking." Kael followed her gaze. "Then we'll have to decide whether to rebuild them, or let them fall." Lyra's lips curved, not in defiance, but in quiet acceptance of what she had become. "Let them fall," she said. And in that sacred ruin, beneath the gaze of gods and ghosts, the destiny of wolves began to stir once more. The night they returned to the capital, the sky bled red. The moon hung swollen and furious above the Roman stronghold, its glow draped across the marble spires like a silent omen. Even the wind carried unease, low, sharp, restless. The sentries at the gate whispered her name with a mixture of fear and superstition. The banished one. The cursed one. The girl who came back with fire in her veins. Kael walked beside her, his posture rigid beneath his cloak, every muscle alert. His hand brushed hers once, fleeting and protective, but the contact was enough to remind her, whatever awaited them inside the council hall would not be mercy. The fortress of the Roman Alphas loomed ahead, carved from obsidian and limestone, its pillars engraved with the vows of 1,000 generations, strength before mercy. Blood before bond. The doors opened, and the air inside burned cold. The council awaited. 12 seats formed a crescent around a central pyre, its silver flame flickering weakly, as though even it hesitated to witness what was coming. Around them stood dozens of guards, armor gleaming, claws sharpened, eyes like shards of ice. When Lyra stepped into the chamber, the whispers began. She shouldn't be alive. The prophecy fulfilled, blasphemy. She carries cursed blood. Kael has doomed us all. Their words fell like knives, but Lyra didn't flinch. She had stood before exile, before hunger, before the gods themselves. She would not bow now. Kael's voice broke through the murmurs, steady, commanding, but tinged with restrained fury. You summoned us. Speak. The High Consul rose. His eyes were silver and ancient, his presence suffocating. You were warned, Alpha Kael. The girl's return endangers every bloodline under the moon. The prophecy you've hidden has begun to stir. Her existence threatens the pact that binds our kind to peace. She threatens your control, Kael replied. A ripple of disapproval coursed through the hall. Lyra met the High Consul's gaze. You talk of peace while your kind wages silent wars in the shadows. I've seen the ruins. I've seen what your greed has done. Silence. The consul's voice boomed, reverberating through the stone. You speak to gods you do not understand. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes hard. The gods understand me. The words struck like thunder. The council erupted. You defy sacred law. She must be executed. End the curse before it spreads. Kael's growl silenced them. It was not human, it was primal, guttural, the kind of sound that made even the bravest soldiers hesitate. He stepped between Lyra and the council, his stance unwavering. You'll touch her over my dead body. The High Consul's eyes darkened. Then your wish may come true sooner than you think. The torches flickered. The air shifted. Something unseen moved through the shadows at the edge of the chamber. Lyra's instinct screamed. From the darkness, they came, wolves cloaked in smoke and ash, their forms twisted, their eyes glowing an unnatural violet. Shadow wolves, creatures born from forbidden blood magic, their essence corrupted by greed and betrayal. Kael turned instantly, pulling Lyra behind him. They've summoned them. The council's broken the pact. The first wolf lunged. Kael's blade flashed, silver against shadow, slicing through its neck. It dissolved into mist, but more followed, pouring through the cracks in the hall like a plague. Chaos ignited. Guards clashed with monsters. Marble cracked under the weight of the battle. Screams and steel filled the air. Lyra's body moved before her mind did, instinct and fury fused. The sigils on her skin blazed to life, silver flame bursting from her palms as she spun and struck, her power weaving through the darkness like lightning. Every movement was an act of defiance, every breath a declaration that she would not be caged again. The wolves howled, retreating, but more replaced them, endless, hungry. For every one she struck down, another rose. Kael fought beside her, his claws unsheathed, his strikes brutal and precise. He moved like stormlight, grace and rage entwined. But even he was tiring. Blood slicked his arm, staining his armor black. Kael. Lyra's voice cut through the noise. I'm fine, he growled, though his breath came ragged. Stay close. They moved as one, back to back, their power feeding the other. Her silver flame illuminated his strikes, his raw force shielded her flank. For a moment, the bond between them was unbreakable, a pulse shared, a rhythm of survival and love forged in chaos. Then the High Consul's voice rose above the carnage. Enough. The chamber walls split open. The pyre in the center roared higher, consuming the silver flame until it burned crimson. The shadow wolves froze, then turned their gaze toward Lyra. Controlled. Commanded. Kael's expression hardened. He's using the bloodfire ritual. Lyra's pulse quickened. That's forbidden. So is your existence, the consul hissed. The pyre exploded. shards of burning light scattered like shrapnel. Kael shielded Lyra, his body taking the brunt of the blast. She felt the impact through him, the tearing of muscle, the scent of blood, the groan that escaped his throat. Kael. He stumbled but refused to fall. Run. No. Lyra, run. But she didn't. She stepped past him, eyes blazing, silver flames coiling around her like wings of light. I've run enough. The council members recoiled as the ground cracked beneath her. The goddess's mark on her wrist ignited, linking with the moonlight above. The air vibrated with an ancient sound, a heartbeat older than time. She raised her hand, and the silver flame burst forth, colliding with the crimson pyre. Light met shadow. The explosion painted the hall in chaos and brilliance. The shadow wolves screamed as they disintegrated, but their destruction came with a cost. The energy surged back toward her, burning through her veins. Kael grabbed her, his arms wrapping around her trembling frame, grounding her as the storm raged. The consul's voice thundered through the smoke. You see? She is destruction made flesh. Lyra met his gaze, her voice low and shaking. No. I am what you made me. The last of the wolves fell, dissolving into mist. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Kael's uneven breathing. Blood streaked his shoulder, deep gashes marring his chest where the pyre's shards had struck. Lyra pressed her hand over the wound, silver light flickering weakly from her fingers. Hold still. He caught her wrist, his touch firm despite his pain. Don't waste your strength. You need to get out before they. The heavy clang of armor echoed through the chamber. Reinforcements poured in, dozens of alphas from the outer provinces, their eyes hard, their loyalty bought. The High Consul pointed toward her. By decree of the Roman Council, the Cursed One is to be exiled once more. Any alpha who defies this command will fall beside her. Lyra froze. The words struck deeper than any blade. Kael turned, fury crackling in his eyes. You will not touch her. You stand alone, the consul sneered. Then I stand alone. The room bristled with tension, every sword raised, every heartbeat trembling on the edge of violence. Lyra's throat ached. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the chaos. Kael, stop. He turned toward her, confusion flickering behind the rage. If you fight them now, they'll kill you. I don't care. I do. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Her hand rose, brushing the side of his face. The moment lingered, blood, smoke, love, and ruin intertwined. Then she stepped back. The sigils on her skin dimmed, her power receding like a dying flame. If I stay, they'll destroy everything you've built. But if I leave, her voice faltered, then hardened. If I leave, I can come back stronger. Not as their prey. Lyra. She shook her head. As their Luna. Before he could stop her, she turned and ran. The guards lunged, but the remnants of her power flared, knocking them aside. She sprinted through the broken hall, through smoke and ruin, past the shattered altar where the moon's light still lingered faintly. Outside, the crimson moon watched her go, its glow burning against the forest canopy. Each step was agony. Each breath carried the weight of everything she'd lost. But she didn't slow. Not even when Kael's voice echoed faintly behind her, a sound torn from pain and love alike. She didn't look back. Because this time, she wasn't running from exile. She was running toward destiny. The night swallowed her whole, her silhouette dissolving into the mist of Lycra's woods. Behind her, the fortress burned, its flames silver at the edges, refusing to die. And somewhere in the dark, beneath the watchful moon, a vow took form, etched in blood and prophecy. Next time, I won't return as the Banished. I'll return as Luna. The cavern swallowed sound, the walls breathing with ancient memory, damp stone, dripping water, echoes that never truly died. The fire in the center struggled to live, its small orange glow trembling against the cold breath of the mountains. Shadows moved over the curves of the stone, shifting, alive, and among them sat two broken souls who had once commanded empires. Lyra pressed a torn strip of linen against Kael's wound, the blood seeping through faster than she could stop it. His breath hitched, teeth clenched, but he didn't flinch away. He watched her. Always watching, as though he feared that if he blinked, she'd vanish again. "Hold still," she murmured. Her voice was quiet, the edges soft, but it trembled just enough to betray what she felt. Exhaustion, defiance, and something she didn't dare name. Kael gave a strained smile. "I wasn't moving. You were breathing too loud." He huffed a laugh, the sound low and rough. The moment almost felt human, almost. The fire popped. A cinder shot up, and Lyra turned, her hair catching the light like molten silver. Kael's hand rose instinctively, not to touch, but to remember. There had been a time when her presence steadied him, when her laughter had been the sound of home. Now, her silence was the weight of every sin he'd ever committed. Lyra wrung the blood from the cloth and pressed it again, slower this time, her fingers grazing the bare skin of his abdomen. He tensed. So did she. He could smell her heartbeat, quick, uneven, betraying her restraint. "You shouldn't have followed me," she said quietly. Kael's gaze lifted to hers, eyes burning gold in the dim light. "You shouldn't have run." Her jaw tightened. "They wanted my head. You heard them. And I would have given them mine first." The fire cracked louder. Lyra froze, the cloth slipping from her hand. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them thickened, charged, grief tangled with desire, regret knotted with something that still refused to die. Finally, she stood and moved away, her back to him. "Don't say things like that. You don't get to die for me now. You already killed me once." Kael's shoulders slumped, but his voice remained steady. "I know." She turned, the anger in her eyes sharp as a blade. "Do you? Do you remember what it felt like to be dragged across the courtyard in chains? To hear your name, my alpha's name, condemn me while your wolves howled for my blood?" Kael looked up at her, pain etched deep in every line of his face. "I remember every heartbeat of it." "Then you know why I can't forgive you." He nodded slowly. "I don't want forgiveness, Lyra." She blinked, caught off guard. "I just want the truth," he said softly. "The truth of who we are. Even if it burns." Lyra's throat tightened. The truth. That was the one thing she'd buried, deep beneath the scars, the years, the flames. "You don't want the truth," she whispered. "You want absolution." He met her eyes. "No. I want you." The words were quiet, almost lost in the fire's crackle, but they hit like a storm. Lyra stepped back, her heart pounding so loudly it echoed through the cavern. "Don't." Kael rose, slowly, his body still bleeding, every movement strained. Yet his presence filled the space like it always had, unyielding, magnetic, maddening. "Lyra," he said, taking a step closer. "I banished you because I was afraid of losing you." And in doing so, his voice faltered, raw and low. "I lost myself." She stared at him, the man who had once held her heart in his hands and crushed it for the sake of his throne. Her anger fought her longing, her pride battled the ache that had never healed. "You think words can undo chains?" she asked, her voice breaking. "No," he said. "But maybe they can melt them." The silence that followed was fragile. The kind that trembles before it shatters. Kael took another step, close enough for her to feel his heat. The scent of rain and blood and cedar clung to him, familiar, dangerous, devastating. Lyra's eyes flicked up to meet his, and in that single glance, everything they had buried clawed to the surface, the stolen nights, the whispered vows, the way his hand used to fit perfectly at the base of her spine. Her pulse thudded in her throat. He reached out, slowly, as though approaching a wild creature that might bite. His fingers brushed the side of her neck, tracing the line of her jaw, the faint scar she'd carried since the day of her exile. She didn't move. His touch was gentle, reverent, trembling, almost afraid. "Look at me," he whispered. Her breath caught. "Please." Lyra turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze. His eyes weren't those of an alpha now, they were a man's. Stripped bare, begging not for power, but for mercy. I see you, he said softly. All of you. Something in her chest cracked open. He leaned in, his breath warm against her skin. The firelight caught in his hair, flickering gold over the sharp edges of his face. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to the space between them, the scent of smoke, the sound of blood, the pulse of two wolves who had never stopped belonging to each other. Their lips almost met. But then, the howl. It came from deep within the mountains, long and low, carried by the wind. Not a single voice, but many, distant, closing in. Lyra froze. Kael's expression hardened instantly, the soldier returning to his eyes. They've tracked us. Her chest rose and fell, too fast. The council's wolves? Or worse. She stepped back, the moment dissolving, her heart shattering quietly in the echo of what could have been. Reality crashed back, heavy and cruel. I told you, she whispered, her voice hoarse, if I trust you again, it will be the end of me. Kael's jaw clenched. Then let it be. No, she shook her head, tears burning her eyes. You don't understand. Every time I choose you, I lose something. My home. My name. My freedom. How many more pieces of me do I have left to give? Kael's eyes softened. Then let me give you mine. Her breath hitched. He stepped closer, pressing his forehead against hers. The gesture was primal, ancient, the way wolves once swore vows before the gods. You carried the fire alone for too long, he whispered. Let me burn beside you. Lyra closed her eyes. For a heartbeat, she allowed herself to feel it, his warmth, his steadiness, the echo of what they'd been. Then she pulled away. No. The word was barely a whisper, but it felt like a blade. Kael's hands dropped to his sides, his shoulders sinking under the weight of everything unsaid. The fire flickered lower, as if mourning them. Outside, the wind grew louder, the mountain breathing its cold truth. There was no peace for creatures like them. Only choices. Lyra turned away from him, her voice breaking the quiet. When the sun rises, I'll leave. Kael didn't answer. I'll go north, she continued, her tone steadier now. To the ruins of Damaris. The old text said the silver blood could awaken her full power there. If the prophecy is true, that's where I'll find the truth of it. Kael finally spoke, his voice low. You won't make it alone. I always have. I won't let them take you again. Lyra looked back, her eyes glinting with something between sorrow and defiance. You can't protect me from destiny, Kael. Not anymore. He took a step toward her, but she raised a hand, stopping him. Don't follow me this time. The words cut through him more deeply than any wound. The silence that followed was long and unbearable. The fire dimmed, painting both their faces in soft, dying light. Finally, Kael turned away, sitting beside the wall, exhaustion consuming him. Lyra watched him for a moment, the man who had once been her alpha, her ruin, her home. Then she moved to the cave's mouth, where the moonlight spilled through the cracks like a blessing and a warning all at once. Her silver flame flickered faintly across her palms. She whispered to herself, not to him, if I trust him again, it will be the end of me. But if I don't, it might be the end of everything. The words lingered in the air, fragile as ash. And somewhere deep within her, her wolf stirred, restless, longing, ready for what came next. The fire died out. The mountain exhaled. And between love and ruin, the night held its breath. The city burned with her name. Lyra. It rolled through the streets like thunder after lightning, whispered in fear, in awe, in desperate denial. The smoke carried her scent, silver ash and blood. The night sky above the capital glowed with a ghostly light, as if the moon itself bowed in mourning. Beneath the collapsing spires of the council citadel, Kael stood frozen, surrounded by ruin. His chest heaved, eyes wild with the reflection of the inferno that had once been the heart of his rule. Lyra was gone. And yet, he could still feel her. Her heartbeat echoed inside him, faint but alive, threaded through the bond neither exile nor betrayal could sever. He fell to his knees in the rubble, the heat of her power still licking at his skin. He had seen it, the silver flame unbound. It was beautiful, terrifying, divine. The prophecy had not lied. But in that beauty was devastation. Every stone that crumbled was a reminder of his failure, every scream from the streets a consequence of his doubt. He had hesitated. And that single hesitation had destroyed everything. When dawn finally came, it came blood-red. The survivors gathered in silence, the ruins of the council spread before them like an open wound. Lucian stood atop the broken stairs, his armor scorched but his voice steady. "The Alpha has fallen," he declared. "The cursed flame has consumed her. This is the cost of his weakness." Kael's hand trembled around his blade, fury igniting beneath the surface. He had no words. No defense. Only guilt. Lucian's betrayal cut deeper than any wound, not because it was treachery, but because it had been faith turned venom. Lyra's name was now spoken as legend and curse alike. Some claimed she had perished in the fire. Others swore they'd seen her walking through the smoke, untouched, radiant, the silver flame reborn. Kael knew the truth in his marrow. She was alive. The bond pulsed faintly through his veins, like an ember that refused to die. Still, the pact demanded blood. His council was dead. The empire fractured. The Roman alphas had already declared him unfit to rule. They would come for him soon. But none of it mattered. Not the throne. Not the power. Not the council's decree. Only her. He turned from the wreckage, his voice low, broken. "If she still breathes, I'll find her. And if the gods demand my life for what I've done, they'll have to take it from her fire." He left the city before sunrise. Alone. Far beyond the capital, Lyra wandered through the wastelands, her body trembling from exhaustion. Every step left a faint shimmer on the ground, traces of her flame that refused to fade. The forest that surrounded her had been blackened by her outburst, yet the grass she walked on seemed to bloom again under her bare feet. She didn't remember leaving the city. Only the blinding light. The moment the power took over, devouring everything that stood against her. It hadn't been her choice, it was as if the goddess inside her had awakened fully, taking control, silencing her rage by unleashing something far greater. Now, the silence was unbearable. She pressed her palm against a tree trunk, watching it glow faintly beneath her touch. The silver flame no longer burned like chaos, it hummed with purpose, alive and listening. But it wasn't mercy she felt. It was grief. Deep, endless grief that hollowed her from the inside out. "Kael," she whispered, and the forest answered with the echo of his name. She hated that she still loved him. Hated that his memory lingered between every heartbeat, that even after betrayal, her soul reached for his. But love, like fire, didn't obey reason. It only consumed. She sank to her knees beside a shallow stream. The reflection staring back was unrecognizable, eyes bright with light that wasn't human, markings along her collarbone glowing faintly with lunar silver. The goddess's mark. "You wanted me gone," she said softly to the wind, her voice cracking. "You wanted the prophecy buried. But now I am what you feared." The water beneath her hand rippled, and then, it shifted. For a heartbeat, she saw Kael's face in the reflection. His pain. His guilt. His longing. She jerked back, gasping. The bond wasn't broken. It was stronger. Her outburst hadn't severed it, it had fused them tighter. The silver flame was no longer just hers, it had chosen him, too. She clenched her fists. No. Not again. Not him. But the goddess inside whispered otherwise. The Alpha and the Flame are one. The prophecy cannot complete without both. Lyra stood, her pulse racing. She didn't need prophecy. She needed truth. Meanwhile, Lucian stood before the surviving council, cloaked in shadow. The smell of charred marble still clung to the air. "The silver flame is unbound," he said. "If she lives, she will return. And when she does, we will not make the same mistake as Kael." He turned toward the altar of the gods, where the ancient chains once forged to bind divine wolves lay shattered. "Prepare the hunt," he ordered. "She cannot be allowed to rise again." The council bowed. But in his eyes, there was something more than duty, obsession. Lucian had seen the flame up close, and it had burned itself into him. He wanted it. Wanted her. Not as a queen. As power. Kael tracked her scent through forests, rivers, and snow. The closer he drew, the stronger the pull became, not of longing, but of destiny clawing at his soul. Every night he dreamed of her flame, of her eyes the moment she vanished in light. He woke drenched in sweat, her voice still echoing in his head, "I am no one's curse." But she wasn't a curse. She was the truth he had been too weak to face. When he finally reached the Valley of Mirrors, a place whispered to reveal the soul's reflection, he found her. Lyra stood beneath the crescent moon, her back turned, hair silver in the light. The flame flickered around her like a living spirit, wrapping her in ethereal grace. "You shouldn't have come," she said, not turning. "I had no choice." His voice broke the still air. "You left me in ruins. You built those ruins yourself." He stepped closer. "Then let me rebuild them with you." The silence stretched between them, heavy, suffocating, filled with everything they'd never said. Finally, she turned. Her eyes burned like the moon's heart, beautiful and dangerous. "If you stay, you'll burn. I'd rather burn beside you than live without you." The air shimmered. The bond between them flared, their wolves howling in unison across the unseen plains of spirit. But before she could answer, the earth trembled. Lucian's army emerged from the shadows, hunters draped in silver armor, the council's sigils gleaming on their chests. Lyra's breath hitched. Kael stepped in front of her, sword drawn. "They followed me," he murmured. "They want your power." She lifted her hand, the flame rising, pure and deadly. "Then they'll have to face the goddess they tried to cage." The first arrow struck the ground, hissing with silver poison. Kael grabbed her hand, meeting her gaze. "Trust me," he whispered. For the first time, she did. Their wolves merged, flame and shadow entwined. The air around them ignited with divine energy. As Lucian raised his blade, shouting, "For the throne!" the valley itself awakened. The mirrors cracked, reflecting infinite versions of Lyra's fire. The sky split open. The prophecy's final line echoed in both their minds, "When the Alpha and the Flame unite, the world will either bow, or burn." And as the first clash erupted under the blood moon, Lyra realized, this was never about vengeance. It was about becoming. The gods had written her story in flame. But she would finish it in her own voice. And in the heart of battle, as Kael's blood mixed with her light, she whispered through the roar of chaos. "Then let the world burn, for love." The wind tore through the ruins of the empire like a cry of judgment, carrying the scent of ash and memory. The city that had once enslaved her now knelt beneath a blood-streaked sky. The Colosseum stood in ruin, its broken arches framing the moon like the eye of a dying god. Lyra walked through the gates that had once bound her wrists in chains. The ghosts of her past whispered from every shadow, the jeers of the crowd, the snap of the whip, the taste of blood in her mouth. But tonight, she was not the captive. She was the fire that came to collect its debt. The torches that lined the arena ignited one by one as she passed, as if the world itself bowed to her flame. Her bare feet touched the cracked stones, and silver light spread in ripples beneath her, carving new sigils into the earth, the mark of the Silver-Blood Queen. At the center of the arena stood Kael. Shackled. Kneeling. His arms stretched outward, chains glowing with runes that pulsed like veins of molten iron. His chest rose and fell, bloodied but unbroken. Around him, the Roman council stood in their silver cloaks, chanting the old words, words meant to bind gods, not wolves. And behind them, Lucian waited. He was no longer a man. His form flickered between flesh and shadow, eyes burning red, voice dripping with power stolen from the gods. The air around him rippled with corruption, the remnants of the ritual that had turned him into something the earth itself rejected. He smiled when he saw her. "You came back." Lyra's voice was low, steady. "I came to end what began with betrayal." Lucian stepped closer, dragging a black blade that hummed with unnatural energy. "You could have ruled beside me. The world would have bowed to your flame. Instead, you chose him." Her gaze flickered to Kael, bound, beaten, silent. His eyes found hers, and in them she saw everything he could not say: apology, devotion, surrender. She turned back to Lucian. "I didn't choose him." The air around her shimmered, flames coiling around her wrists. "I chose myself." The earth quaked. Her power flared like dawn bursting through night. The runes binding Kael trembled. The council stumbled backward as silver light consumed the arena. Lyra lifted her hand, and the chains shattered, not with sound, but with silence so absolute that even the wind dared not move. Kael fell to the ground, gasping, but when he looked up at her, it was not the Lyra he remembered. This was something older, something divine, the goddess reborn in flesh. Her hair flowed like molten silver, her eyes burning white. The mark across her chest glowed like a heartbeat. Lucian laughed. "You think power makes you divine?" "I don't think," she said, stepping closer. "I know." He lunged. Shadows erupted, stretching across the ground like serpents. They struck at her, but before they could reach, her flame met them midair, consuming darkness and blinding light. The clash of power shook the Colosseum, tearing ancient stone apart, collapsing the upper walls. The gods stirred in the heavens above. The moon trembled, flickering between white and crimson. Kael rose, still weak but drawn by the pull of their bond. His wolf growled beneath his skin, begging for release. He could feel her pain, the burn of her power carving through her veins. If she kept unleashing it, the goddess's energy would devour her from the inside out. "Lyra," he shouted over the storm of flame. "You'll kill yourself." Her eyes flashed toward him, luminous, sorrowful. "Then let me die free." But Kael's voice broke through her storm, raw and fierce. "No. You are not their weapon. You are not their curse. You are mine." Something inside her faltered. The fire hesitated, flickered. Her heart, her human heart, still beat beneath the divinity. It remembered his touch, his voice, the night he had said her name like a prayer. Lucian struck again. This time, Kael moved first. His wolf exploded forth, breaking through the final barrier that had held him back. His transformation was violent, primal, the Alpha reborn. His eyes burned gold, his fur dark as night, his form massive and feral. He collided with Lucian mid-strike, claws against shadow, teeth against steel. Lyra's fire joined the battle, divine light twisting with his dark power. Flame and fang. Moon and shadow. Alpha and flame. The Colosseum became a storm of elements, ancient power reborn through their bond. Lucian's laughter turned to screams as the goddess's fire consumed his corrupted magic. Still he fought, feeding on the darkness, clawing for her power. "You can't kill what's eternal," he shouted. Lyra's voice broke through the storm, low, unyielding. "Then I'll unmake you." She lifted her hands to the sky. The air ignited. The moon cracked, bleeding light over the battlefield. Statues of gods crumbled, their eyes glowing one last time before shattering. "By the flame that forged this world," she whispered, "I claim my fate." Wings of silver fire burst from her back, spreading wide enough to blot out the stars. Her wolf emerged fully, vast, radiant, divine. The goddess's form shimmered behind her, translucent but immense, mirroring her every move. Lucian screamed as her light consumed him. The shadow disintegrated piece by piece until all that remained was dust carried away by the wind. When the silence fell, it was holy. The Colosseum lay in ruin, half turned to molten glass. The council had vanished. Only Kael and Lyra remained, breathing, trembling, alive. She collapsed to her knees, the fire fading from her body. The wings dissolved into ash. Kael ran to her, falling beside her, his hand shaking as he touched her face. "Lyra," he whispered, voice breaking. "Stay with me." Her eyes opened, no longer blinding white, but soft silver. Mortal again. Human. "Did I destroy them?" He nodded. "You destroyed everything that bound you." Tears slipped down her cheek. "Then it's over." He smiled faintly, leaning closer. "No. It's beginning." The people began to gather at the broken gates. Wolves from every pack, warriors, elders, even children, drawn by the power that had shaken the world. They looked upon her not as a curse, but as salvation. When Lyra stood, weak but radiant, the crowd fell silent. The light of the moon poured over her, crowning her in silver. She raised her voice, soft yet carrying through the ruins. "You called me cursed. You chained me. You tried to make me your sacrifice. But I was never born to be burned. I was born to burn for what is right. For freedom. For truth. For every wolf that ever bowed to fear." The wind caught her words and carried them across the empire. "I am not your sacrifice," she said again, louder. "I am your reckoning." The wolves knelt. Kael bowed his head beside her, his golden eyes reflecting her light. For the first time since the prophecy's birth, the silver flame and the alpha stood side by side, equals, bound not by destiny, but by choice. Above them, the shattered moon began to mend. The storm quieted. The gods' whispers faded. And as dawn rose over the ruins of an empire, Lyra took Kael's hand, her voice barely a breath. "We rebuild now. Not as ruler and exile, but as one." He kissed her hand, reverent, trembling. "Luna." Her flame answered, glowing faintly in her chest. Not wild, not raging. Controlled. Chosen. The fire that once consumed the world now burned steady, bright, a promise. The prophecy had ended. But the legend of the Luna had just begun. The ruins glowed faintly beneath the pale kiss of dawn. Smoke still curled from the earth, whispering through the cracks of fallen marble, the remnants of a battle that had rewritten fate itself. The air was thick with the ghost of power, her power, lingering like a heartbeat too loud to fade. Lyra stood in the center of the Colosseum that had once been her cage. Her body was weary, trembling, but her spirit, her fire, pulsed steady beneath her skin. The moon hung low, fractured but mending, its silver light tracing every scar across her face like a map of survival. She inhaled slowly. The scent of charred stone, blood, and rain filled her lungs. The silence that followed victory was never peace, it was the echo of what it cost. Her hands still trembled from what she had unleashed, from the gods that had spoken through her veins, from the choice that had remade her world. Kael stood a few steps behind her, silent, watching. His wounds glistened in the pale light, his wolf still restless beneath his skin. There was pride in his eyes, yes, but also fear. Not of her power, but of what it might demand next. Lyra didn't turn to face him at first. She simply stared at the horizon, where the first threads of dawn reached across the sky, painting the ashes gold. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than a whisper. "They called me cursed," she said. The words floated between them, fragile but certain. "They burned me. Chained me. Named me the end of all things." She paused, her breath catching, the weight of memory pressing down on every syllable. "But maybe the curse was never the fire," she continued softly. "Maybe it was their fear of its light." The wind stirred her hair, carrying the faint scent of smoke and salt. Her reflection shimmered in the molten glass beneath her feet, the face of a woman who had been everything they tried to destroy and still refused to die. Kael stepped closer, his voice rough, stripped of command. "What will you do now?" Lyra turned to him then. Her eyes, once filled with rage and pain, now held something quieter, deeper. Resolve. Understanding. Freedom. She glanced at the sky again, where the sun met the moon's fading light. I'll become what they feared, she said. I'll become free. The words fell like a vow, soft but unshakable. She wasn't promising vengeance anymore. She wasn't chasing justice. She was choosing herself, wholly, fiercely, finally. Kael's breath caught. For the first time, he saw her not as the Luna he'd tried to protect, not as the goddess he feared, but as the woman he had broken and who still chose to rise. He reached for her, but his hand stopped midair, unsure if he was worthy to touch something so unbound. Lyra looked down at his outstretched hand. Her fingers twitched, not to take it, not to pull away, but to remind herself that she could choose. That choice was her power now. You don't have to walk this alone, Kael murmured. Her gaze softened, but her words cut gently through the quiet. Neither do you. But freedom starts apart. He nodded, his jaw tightening with the kind of understanding that hurt. Then I'll find you, he said quietly. When the world's ready to follow your fire. Lyra's lips curved, almost a smile, almost a memory. The world doesn't need to follow it, she whispered. It needs to learn how to burn. And with that, she turned from him. The hem of her cloak brushed the marble, leaving faint trails of silver light in her wake. The wolves that had once bowed to the council now watched her with reverence, their eyes glowing with the reflection of her flame. Every step she took was both an ending and a beginning. She passed beneath the archway of the broken Colosseum, where ivy curled through the cracks and moonlight painted her path. The air shifted, carrying the scent of wild freedom, pine, rain, and lightning. The kind of air that belonged to no empire, no throne, no chain. Kael watched her go, his heart heavy, his wolf restless. He knew this was not goodbye, only distance. Only time. He could still feel the pull of her spirit, the invisible thread that connected them beyond fate, beyond prophecy. Lyra stopped at the edge of the ruins, her silhouette bathed in light. For a long moment, she stood there, the silver flame reborn, the Luna unbound. Then, without a word, she stepped into the forest, swallowed by mist and moonlight. The world held its breath. And then, her voice. Soft, distant, carried on the wind. If her fire stirred something in you, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, we tell tales that burn, and heal. Her echo lingered, threaded with promise, fading into dawn. The ruins fell silent again, but somewhere far beyond the city walls, the flame of the Luna burned on. Under the shattered gaze of the crimson moon, the air thickened with tension so palpable it felt alive, breathing, watching, waiting. The great hall of the Roman council pulsed with hostility, its marble floors reflecting the cold fire of 100 accusing eyes. Torches sputtered along the walls, their flames trembling like frightened hearts as Lyra stepped forward, her pulse hammering beneath her ribs. She could feel their hatred before she heard it, the whispers that slithered through the air like poison. Cursed blood. Witch. Moon's mistake. Every word scraped against her like claws, stripping away the fragile hope she'd carried on her journey back. Kael stood at her side, broad shoulders squared, his jaw tight, his scent brimming with barely contained rage. His presence had always been a fortress to her, warm, immovable, a promise, but now, even he seemed to tremble under the weight of what they faced. The council loomed before them, a semicircle of power draped in gold and fur. At their center, Lord Cashin, Alpha of Alphas, leaned forward with a sneer that cut deeper than any blade. You bring her here again? His voice carried through the chamber like thunder. After she burned our cities and defied our decrees? Kael's voice was low, rough as gravel. She saved lives that night. She stopped the blood ritual before it could enslave our kin. She defied the law, Cashin spat. She defied the gods. Lyra's gaze rose, her silver-flecked eyes catching the torchlight. I defied monsters who hid behind laws. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with fury held too long. If justice is a crime, then your counsel is a curse upon this world. A murmur rippled through the room. The scent of unrest filled the air, iron and smoke, fear and pride. Kael turned to her, eyes wide with warning, but it was too late. The council erupted in chaos. "Arrest her," someone roared. "No," another countered, "let her speak, let the gods judge." The chamber fractured into shouting, the sound swelling until it became a storm of hatred and fear. Kael reached for Lyra's hand, pulling her behind him as guards surged forward. She could feel his body heat, the thunder of his heartbeat through his skin. He was ready to fight them all. To die for her if it came to that. And then, the scent hit her, foul and metallic. Not wolf. Something darker. Out of the shadows at the far end of the hall came a growl so low it seemed to rise from the earth itself. The torches dimmed. And then they emerged, wolves not of flesh and blood but of mist and smoke, their eyes hollow, their fangs dripping with black fire. Shadow wolves. Kael stiffened. They shouldn't exist. They do, Lyra whispered. The council summoned them. Chaos broke loose. The first of the creatures lunged, its claws slicing through the air. Kael met it head-on, shifting mid-leap, his form exploding into his massive obsidian wolf. He collided with the beast in a blur of muscle and fury, tearing through the shadow's body only for it to reform, its shape flickering like flame in the wind. Lyra spun, calling the fire within her. It rose like breath, wild and instinctive, coiling through her veins until her palms glowed silver white. She thrust her hands forward, and the flames erupted, carving a line of light across the hall. The nearest shadow wolves shrieked, their bodies evaporating in a hiss of smoke. But for every one that fell, 3 more took its place. Screams echoed. Guards turned on one another, blinded by illusions cast by the beasts. The council scrambled for escape, robes trailing like banners of cowardice. Lyra's eyes darted through the chaos, searching for Kael. She found him locked in combat, surrounded, his dark fur slick with blood that wasn't all his own. "Kael," she cried. He turned, his eyes glowing amber, wild and beautiful even through the blood and the smoke. "Get out," he roared through the bond that pulsed between them. "Run, Lyra." But she couldn't. She wouldn't. Another wolf lunged. She met it head-on, fire blazing through her chest. The impact sent her sprawling across the marble, her back slamming into the cold floor. Pain shot up her spine, but before she could rise, a claw struck across her cheek, drawing blood. It burned, not from the wound, but from the darkness threaded within it. She hissed, her power flaring in reflex. The air shimmered, heat spiraling out in waves that turned marble molten. The creature screamed and vanished, leaving only smoke. Kael appeared above her in an instant, dragging her to her feet. His human form returned, half-shifted, blood painting his skin in dark streaks. "You shouldn't have come back," he growled. "I couldn't stay away," she breathed, her voice breaking. "Not while they hunted our kind." His hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing the blood on her cheek. "You'll get yourself killed for them. Then let me die for something that matters." For a heartbeat, silence existed between them, fragile, infinite. Then a voice tore through it. "Enough." Lucian stepped forward from the council's dais, his blade dripping with the black ichor of slain shadows. His golden armor gleamed in the torchlight, a mockery of purity. His eyes, once Kael's brother in battle, were now shards of cold deceit. "Look around you," Lucian hissed. "This is what she brings, fire and ruin." The council was right. She's the prophecy made flesh, the silver flame destined to consume us all. Kael's grip tightened. "You don't know what you're saying." "Oh, I do," Lucian said, raising his sword. "And I know what must be done." The shadows obeyed. They surged toward Lyra in a wave of black fog. She threw her arms wide, summoning everything within her. Fire exploded outward, colliding with darkness in a blast that shattered glass and stone. The force sent Kael sprawling, the walls groaning as pillars cracked under the strain. When the smoke cleared, Lyra stood at the center, eyes blazing, hair whipping like flame in the wind. Around her, bodies lay strewn, some breathing, most not. And in the center of it all, the council's decree rose above the silence. Exile her again, or fall with her. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kael turned to her, torn between duty and the desperate pull of his heart. His lips parted, but no words came. Lyra's throat ached. The betrayal wasn't in his silence, it was in his hesitation. She stepped back, the silver glow fading from her hands. "You don't need to say it," she whispered. "I already know." Her tears glimmered like molten silver as she turned away. The hall blurred around her, the taste of ash thick in her throat. Behind her, Kael roared, a sound torn between rage and heartbreak, but he didn't follow. Outside, the wind howled like a mourning wolf. The moon dipped low, washing her in pale light as she stumbled into the ruins of the city. She fell to her knees on the cracked stones where once the people had cheered her name. The scent of smoke still lingered in her hair. Her heart pounded like a drum of war, her mind whispering the truth she had always known but never wanted to believe. The world would never accept what it feared. She pressed her palm to the earth, her fire flickering weakly against the chill. "You want me gone," she whispered to the night. "Then I'll vanish. But when I return," her eyes lifted to the moon, the tears drying as determination hardened her voice. "I'll return as Luna. Not hunted. Not broken. But as the fire they'll kneel before." Lightning split the sky above her, and the wind shifted, carrying her vow into the night. And in the distance, far beyond the walls of the city, something ancient stirred, an answering pulse that recognized her name, her power, her pain. The world had fought back. But so would she.